was told this suit would be my prison. Suits me just fine. Been called a lot of things. A renegade, an outlaw. Guilty as charged. Makes life exciting. You never know who or the what will be on your side. So when the Nexus King called it, there was only one thing to say. Hell, it's about time.
What is up, guys? My name is Kevin Johnson, and we are here at Blizzard Entertainment for our 4th live dev Q&A. What you just saw was the Tychus trailer from our Tychus Week Focus last week. Welcome to Blizzard. We are very excited for our 4th show with you today. We're going to be talking about the talent system in Heroes of the Storm, where it came from, where it is now, and possibly where it's headed in the future. I have some very special guests with us here today, so let me introduce them to you. To my right, this is Mr. Richard Koo, Senior Game Designer from Team 1. Welcome, Richard. We brought out the leather couch for you today.
It's a lovely couch. I wish I could have one for myself.
Awesome. Good. To Richard's right, Mr. Matt Cooper, Game Designer as well from Team 1. Welcome.
Super excited to be here. Awesome sandwich we got going on.
Yeah, look, it's really cozy. It's nice. And of course, Mr. Dustin Browder, Game Director for Heroes of the Storm. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
I still have yet to shake you from the show, and I'm really glad you're coming back. So, anyways, before we dive into the meat of the show, let me get some of the housework out of the way. We are going to be taking your questions on the talent system. So if you have them, you'd like to throw questions at these guys, head over to Twitter, use the hashtag HeroesQA, and we're going to be pulling those later in the show. Also, we will be having a show match for you as well, casted by Mr. Kevin Naki and Matt Cooper, who you just met. If you would like to have an impact on that game, you can head over to our straw poll where you can choose which hero Richard Koo will be playing as we follow his talent choices throughout that game. So there might be a link in the Twitch chat. There might be a link on our Twitter account. The link is somewhere. I'm sure you can find it. We would love to get you to vote and participate in the choices being made there. So, all right, let's dive in. Guys, this has been a huge week for us, for Blizzard, for you guys. Those of you watching who might not know, last week we launched our first public test of Heroes of the Storm called our Technical Alpha. Limited pool of players, very small. Yeah. But obviously a big step for you guys. What has that been like? What are you guys feeling? What are you talking about? How do you feel?
You know, Kevin, like, it's there's only so many times as a game developer that you put your game out there and it feels like the wild, wild west. And that's what it feels like to me right now. You know, I think I go in with a hero and I'm armed with all these knives, but really it's a gunfight. And it just, there's all these like awesome things that players are doing. The community is catching on super fast. And it's just really exciting to see where the game is going and getting more people involved.
Yeah, that's awesome. How about you, Matt? What's it been like?
Yeah, I think for me it's just, you know, being able to go home any time of the night, queue up, get games, and some really good games, I might add, and be able to take off the gloves and kind of, you know, like internally we kind of got our designer, you know, sparring mitts on, stuff like that. But, you know, there's a lot of really good players in this, so it's great to try out some kind of the higher end strategies. And
go to town.
For sure.
Dustin, anything that surprised you over the course of this week?
I mean, we've seen this before with StarCraft. We went live with StarCraft. You know, I think one of the things that we saw very early on, you remember this, Matt, from the balance bullpen we were in, where we had more Protoss proxy gate rushing than we knew we could shake a stick at. Like, it was so much Protoss proxy gate rush, and we knew it was going to be a risk, but we didn't know it was going to be that bad. I think we're seeing some of that as well. So we knew that some of these heroes might be a little bit overpowered, and we're seeing, seeing like a lot of Uther right now. We're seeing a lot of stuff like, okay, we need to fix that, right? Like really stuff. And like these guys, I mean, it's so fun to be able to play games on a regular basis. We had big plans for our metagame, for how you unlock heroes and all this stuff. We couldn't really test it in a way that would tell you how it felt, because when we were just playing internally, maybe you got 1 or 2 games a night. You couldn't sit down and play a game every 20 minutes to see how the experience actually was. And now we're starting to get to do that. And it's been super fun. Man. And I guess on a personal level too, like I think we were talking about this earlier, right? But I mean, this will never come again, right? Because it's such a small community we're doing. Right now it's mostly Blizzard developers, and it's some streamers, and it's some community folks. But it's like Heroes Death. It's like Celebrity Deathmatch right now. Like, you never know who you're gonna get. You're probably getting a developer, or you're probably getting a streamer. And then there's a bunch of other folks too. But every third game, it feels like you're getting somebody oh my God, I think I know who that is, right?
Yeah,
And so it's a really fun way to play the game.
That is fun. I've had a blast myself. It's been really awesome. Congratulations, guys. It's been a really cool week. I know the game, this is just the very tip of everything you guys have to offer here. But I know it's been exciting, and we're looking forward to the future. So, all right, well, we're going to jump into the meat of the show here. We're going to talk about talents. I'd love to hear from you guys. You know, how do we kick this conversation off? You know, what has talents been like for you? Where have they come from, and where are we now? I'm very interested in hearing what that story's been like for you guys.
Well, we have a huge amount of work that's gone into this character customization system, and we tried over many years now to get this system to a place that we're really excited about. And we've got it in a place where we feel like it's pretty close to where we want to be. It's not done by any stretch of the imagination, but it's pretty close. I actually have a PowerPoint that I brought that I can show you guys.
Cool, yeah, let's take a look.
Sort of what we've got and what we're planning. You can see some of the changes we've made. So if we look at the first slide, you can see kind of what we've got in game today. And I joke this is version, 3,452, but that may not be far from the truth. I know, Rich, you've worked on so many versions of this thing.
So many versions.
It's insane how many versions that we've gone through. And I know Rich personally has done a ton of work on these different systems. Some of our earlier systems for customization were a generic talent tree for all heroes. And you'd have a couple hundred talents lying around that anyone could choose from. And one of the challenges we had with this kind of structure is we found it very difficult to make the talents feel epic and to give the talents appropriate talents to appropriate heroes. So the example I always use is, what if we want to give a cooldown talent to ETC, because we want him rocking out his guitar. And he's always, wow, there's a talent I can get where I can just kind of go nuts with ETC. We give that same talent to Nova, and we're like, whoa, this doesn't work. She's insane. She's sniping every 3 seconds now. This is insane. What do we do? Do we nerf snipe? Oh, and if you don't choose the talent, it feels terrible. And it starts to get into this very dark, weird place where it doesn't really work, and or you start really watering down these talents. But by having a custom talent tree per hero, we can say, oh, if you want a cooldown talent on ETC that's ridiculous, let's do it. Nova never sees that talent. It's not part of her kit. And then we got heroes like Abathur as well, right? Like, where most of the talents don't even apply to this guy, right? When we had that in the game, I know you actually had made a custom talent.
Yeah, one of the things I had to do for Abathur was, a lot of these talents, like, you can do more attack damage, you can have more health. Abathur is behind the lines casting Symbiote, so it made sense to actually create a custom talent content for him. He actually was a great inspiration for us
for
the system as it exists right now.
So remember, I think at the time we actually had the talent tree for all was in the game, and then we had Abathur, and he was like living in his own little world, right? Like this weird space.
But what was awkward about the talent tree was that we had all these we had little bits of hero-specific content. Where do they even live in the talent tree? Like, what level do you get them? So.
So that was, I think the big inspiration for us was trying to create something that really lets the choices be extremely meaningful. The other thing you're going to see, and these guys are going to go through and show you some of the talents that we've got in the game now, is we've got stuff that's like specifically to somebody's Q ability. Right? Like this does, like it's a bigger AoE, right? Or I get, Demon Hunter with her vault, right? She will leave caltrops behind her when she vaults. How does that work in a generic system? Does that mean as Stitches, I'm like, vault? Why is vault here? You know what I mean? Like it would be very confusing and clunky. But if we can point it directly at the hero, we get much crazier choices, much more sort of insane powers.
Definitely. Very cool.
So if we look at the PowerPoint again, I'll take you to the next slide, and we can we'll start letting Matt talk through some of this here, as he's done a lot of the work on the content in the most latest version of the system that Richard sort of set up for us. This is an older version of the talent system we had just even a couple of weeks ago. This was in the game, and you can see it's kind of predictable. There's some stats in there. There's kind of a utility ability at the bottom, and it's a very stat-focused experience. And we really went away from that. And we go to the next slide. You'll see kind of where we're at for the first choices for Myrddin today. You want to talk about some of the choices you made here for Myrddin, Cooper or Matt, and why you thought those worked?
Yeah, for sure. So with the previous slide, there was a lot of, Myrddin could spec into health or he could spec into damage. But we kind of thought that kind of forced your hand into a certain build. If I go health at the beginning, I kind of have to go health all the way down. If I want to play tanky, if I go damage, then I'm not that tanky at the end of the game. I start blowing up. Or if I go a lot of health, I'm not doing damage to minions and stuff. So there was a lot of problems with this kind of system. So, and we also wanted to get more customization, more cool hero-specific stuff. So we go to the next slide. So with this is Myrddin's level 1 choices. So you can see he can, Skullcracker is a talent he can pick up, which is going to augment his basic attack so that he's starting to do little stuns every time he auto-attacks a few times. So there's kind of a stun build you can do with Myrddin where, this would be the first talent you'd kind of pick into that. But of course, there's 2 Q talent upgrades, which would play perfectly into that stun build again. Do you want to permanently increase the power of your Stormbolt every time you land one successfully on an enemy hero with Perfectionist? Or do you want to get a little bit of mana back if you're starting to have some mana problems? And of course, we have the simple choice at the top, the Path of the Warrior. You're not really sure what team comp you're up against. Maybe you're not sure if you're going to have a healer in your lane or whatever. Maybe it's better to get some just bonus health every level. So something really simple.
Yeah. And the focus there, Cooper, and I think you sort of hit upon this, is that Myrddin has a bunch of different builds, and we want the choices that you make to enable those builds. So,
yeah.
So if we go to the next slide. So this is Myrddin's level 4 choices. So the first one, Amplified Healing. Well, this plays nicely into Myrddin's trait power, which basically he regenerates health very quickly out of combat. So this is going to increase that effectiveness quite a bit. But this is probably a better talent to pick if I'm laning with, a Malfurion or an Uther, someone who's actually going to be healing me. Because now all of a sudden, their heals are more impactful on me. But maybe if I'm laning with a Tassadar, maybe I don't necessarily want to pick up this talent. So again, it kind of, what is my team comp? What are the enemies, doing to me and stuff like that? And then, we have 2 upgrades for the W here. Those are kind of focused a little bit around, one reduces your cooldowns for every target you hit with your W. So that's great using it on a full minion wave. But Thunderburn is going to be better, in a one-on-one hero fight where I basically get this effect twice going off. Then of course landing momentum, I can use that to get in and out of combat. It's a great escape, great initiation. So again, it really depends on what kind of playstyle you're going for, and what battleground you're playing on.
The enemy team composition as well. I've seen that where I want that additional speed because I'm playing against somebody who knows going to be very slippery. Like I'm playing against a Nova, for example. I know she's going to try to snipe me and move away, and if I can jump at her, throw my Stormbolt, and get a little bit of speed boost, maybe hit her once to stun her again, suddenly I can really give her a hard time.
I've even found myself picking that up against like Navathur because I see him in that town and I'm like, I just want to dive in that town and I need that speed boost to try and kill him, and then I got to get out, somehow.
You can also see like the choices that you make are escalating in power too. As you commit more and more into the builds, the mechanics get juicier as time goes on.
Definitely.
So we go to the next slide.
Yeah, let's take a look at the next one.
So this is the level 7 choices, and you can see now there's actually 5 choices at this tier, and that's something we're gonna try and work towards with more and more heroes, to give them more options and more ways to play. So we have Block, which is a great talent for sparring with ranged character. Maybe you have a Nova or Demon Hunter in your lane. Well, this is going to reduce some of the damage you're taking from their auto attacks, and you kind of need that as a melee character. Battle momentum, every time Myrddin auto attacks, he's reducing his cooldowns on his abilities. So this could kind of play into your stun lock build again, where if I can get on you and I have my Skullcracker from level 1, and I get a couple auto attacks in, well, now I get a second Stormbolt in, and it kind of plays up that. But of course, now there's a Stormbolt talent here too with the Pierce. So, we see a lot of, on, a map like Cursed Hollow, people will be trying to gather the tributes, and, you have one player trying to body block for the other player because, if the player channeling on the tribute takes damage, it actually resets their channel and they have to do it again. Well, now you get a talent like this, and, well, you can actually hit 2 heroes with it. And again, on level 1, there was Perfectionist, which every time you hit a hero, you get 5 permanent damage. So, ooh, this kind of plays into that. I can start getting 10 if I can land it on 2 heroes. So there's just a lot going on here. And then, Searing Attacks, that's really going to play into a Myrddin who's trying to do more of a damage build. You can activate this, you're going to spend a little bit of extra mana, but now your attacks are doing a lot more damage. So again, it kind of, are you trying to play up the Stunlock Myrddin? Maybe you want a little bit more tankiness. Are you playing towards your team comp or the enemy team comp and so on?
Sure.
Level 10 on the next slide, of course, in Heroes of the Storm, we let you pick from 2 heroic abilities. And again, these are, depending on the talents I've chosen up to this point, depending on the team comps, very different choices here. Avatar is going to make me incredibly tanky. It's going to let me go into combat and take a lot more punishment, and even give my auto attacks another basic stun, so I can really start to play into this build. And Haymaker, I can knock an Uther or Malfurion, a support character out of the fight, so we can focus on their DPS characters, or maybe I can get way in the back of their team and knock someone into my team. And again, maybe I picked up that the leap talent where I move faster after using my dwarf toss, that's going to play up the haymaker because now I can move around and I can get in the right position to use the haymaker ability.
Yeah. And to be clear, like we actually designed these talents with the intention that players are going to stack them. So correct me if I'm wrong, Cooper. You know this better than I do. If you have Avatar with the stun attack and you also have Skullcracker, when that Skullcracker procs, it's the stun from the Skullcracker plus the Avatar stun, right?
It should be. We'd have to double check everything, but yeah, I mean these talents, they're all meant to improve off of one another and stuff like that. So our intention is not to have two talents that like, well, if I pick these both together, they're not really working together. And we have a little bit of that in the game right now, but we're definitely looking for those, and we're gonna fix those and make them all synergize well together.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. The choices are awesome, and obviously add for a variety of gameplay. As you guys moved away from the choosing, choice of attack damage or spell damage, like how did you guys handle that? Like, did you just change the way characters or heroes scale throughout a game now, or in order to allow more of these choices?
That's a great point. So in the previous system, we had every time your hero leveled up, you would gain maybe 80 health, some damage, and so on, and you would be picking some stat choices along with your other talent choices. So if you went all the health talent choices, you would end up with a lot of health but very little damage.
Sure.
So when we went away from that system, we took the majority of that power and we added it back into the level curve. So now as you level up, a tank is going to be tanky at the end of the game just from leveling up, but they're also going to have some meaningful amount of damage. So Arthas in a lane, in the previous system, if Arthas did not pick any damage, he's going to be welling away on those minions and not really doing anything because we're like, well, what if he picks 5 damage talents, right? But in this new system, that's all kind of baked into the leveling curve, and it gives us a little bit more control of like, we know there's a range in which tanks are going to be in, and it kind of makes more sense to what those characters are.
Yeah, totally. There's nothing worse than seeing Frostmourne not
doing
damage a minion.
It's very weird.
And in the previous stat-oriented system, Kevin, like we found that it was like kind of like comparing apples to oranges. Like, do you want stats or do you want cool mechanics? And at the end of the day, we think like there's more things, there's more gameplay surrounding the mechanics.
Sure.
I mean, stats are technically always going to be good for you, but they're not as fun to play with. They feel like a kind of this weird mathy problem.
Sure, yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, let's take a look at the next slide here, right? We have one more.
Yeah. So this is the level 16 Myrddin talents. Again, we have 5 choices to choose from, and there's different talents depending on what playstyle he's going for. The Imposing Presence is going to make him a lot harder to kill because as enemies auto attack him, they're slowed, so he can get in the team fight, really gum it up. Executioner is going to play up the Myrddin who's trying to do attack damage, and of course, Executioner procs whenever the target is stunned or slowed or basically any CC effect. So with Myrddin, building into all these stuns with his auto attacks and so on, he can really get Executioner happening a lot more often than maybe some other characters could, like a Nova or something like that. Heavy Impact. Do you want your Dwarf Toss now? That's just a mobility spell that does a little bit of damage. Well, now that starts stunning, so you can jump in right into a team fight and. To some extent, this is almost like a heroic power, on other characters or whatever. Sure. But if you want to spec into this at level 16, it's a great choice. But then you might be giving up a little bit of your tankiness. Stone Form allows you to activate your trait in combat, and it doesn't matter if you start taking damage. You're just going to get a lot of healing. Rewind. Well, that could play into really any build. Sure. You want to throw out twice as many Storm Bolts. You want to Dwarf Toss once and then a second time to Haymaker them back. Like. Whatever build you're kind of going for, Rewind, it's an active, so it's something you're going to have to, it's an extra button in your toolkit that you're going to have to make use of. But it can kind of play into any of these builds, and that's really exciting for us.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool, guys.
So I think we've got just a couple more slides that I want to show. If you go to the next one, you'll see, this is super temp art that our online and UI guys gave me to show here today, and this is not what it's going to look like in the final game. It's literally grayscale mock-ups. Please, please, please do not think this is final art. But one of the things we're working on, obviously, is the UI for the entire game. We're going to have a big UI pass coming up where we're changing a lot of the HUD, a lot of the in-game UI. And one of the things we're looking at is this talent UI. So what you're seeing here is an example of how you would choose these talents. Maybe, again, this is something we're just mocking up in this UI. And one of the things we want to do is let you have hotkeys to choose which talent you want to have. Sure. Right now, the system we have is it's kind of big, it's kind of clunky. We've heard feedback from players they could accidentally click on it and get something they didn't mean to get. So now we want to be able to say, look, just hit Alt-1 or whatever that hotkey ends up being to activate that talent. And so this would be a way you could quickly choose your talents. Now, if you're new to the game, or you're new to a character, that's not enough information.
Yeah,
Right.
totally.
So if you go to the next slide, I can show you what that experience would be like. So if you want to, you can bring up a full-on description of these talents, like we've got here in this mock-up. And so this would have all of the text and a lot more detail. So when you're first learning a character, you can engage with this UI. But once you're experienced with it, you can engage with the one I showed previously, where you just hit a quick hotkey and you're off to the races. And of course, if you've forgotten one of the hotkeys, you can still mouse over those and wait, which one was this again? Okay, good. And then hit your hotkey and go. And so I think one of the things that's challenging for a lot of our players in this game right now is that the game, in many ways, looks very finished. It looks like it's come a long, long way. And so you look at it, you may think, well, I guess this is it.
Right.
And for us, this is just the beginning.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
we're planning on redoing how we're doing all of the UI for talents, right? And how that's laid out. This is literally a pass we felt like we could put in front of the public and not be totally ashamed, but we didn't really love it, right? And so we want to do a whole pass, and then that will engender a round of feedback, and we'll probably create another pass, right? Depending on how well we do with that, the next version. I think the same thing would apply, I don't know if you guys agree or not, but to the content itself. Like we put a lot of work into this content, but it's still going, right? Like we're still here ready to make changes. We're still here ready to add more choices. We're still here ready to make these choices sharper, more interesting, more difficult to choose, to create more builds across these characters.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You said possibly more choices. Is that something we're going to be seeing, or where even more than
absolutely
than what you have?
Like we're definitely we have some characters in the technical alpha right now that have, I think, anywhere from about 3 to 5 choices. So we're definitely, I think in our next release we're going to try and, or maybe not our next release, but at some point in a release we're going to try and level that up to 4 to 5 talents a hero. But that's we could go to 6, we could go to 7. We don't know where the ceiling is on there, and
And you can still be mad. Go ahead.
Personally, I think we found the fun with the type of choices that you can make as players. I could see us having not just 4 or 5 choices, but up to 10. But then, of course, you'd have to figure out what talents do you want to bring into the game, and how does that UI work? Let's sort of crawl before we walk, before we run. But it's really, really exciting. The possibilities that we have out there.
Awesome, very awesome. Well, let's take some questions from the community. Let's see what they have to say, questions that they have. If you're out there and you would like to submit your question for these gentlemen, you can do that on Twitter using the hashtag HeroesQA. Also, you know what? Let's take a quick look at that straw poll. If you're those of you in the booth there, maybe you can fire that thing up. I would love to take a look at the current situation or status around that. If you're out there and you would like to vote on the gameplay session, which we will be getting to after the Q&A portion, please do that. The straw poll is showing, gosh, who's in the lead? Diablo is winning.
Commanding lead.
Yeah, commanding lead. Awesome. So if you like Diablo, you can go toss your coin in the hat there, or any of the other 2 heroes as well. Try to get them in the fight. All right, let's do this. Let's head over to Twitter and take our first question. Waiting on it here just 1 second. All right. Still waiting. We'll get there. All right, first question. This one from Hidden Troll at Blizz Heroes. You're halfway through a game and you don't like what talents you've picked. You don't like what talents you picked have to offer. Can you reset them mid-game?
Right now, no, you cannot. We've talked about this frequently, and I'm sure the discussion will continue whether this is appropriate. There are reasons we've chosen to start out this way, and one of those big reasons is if I'm, seeing that, Matt is going a certain way, that's meaningful to me, and to have him suddenly change that on me can be very disruptive. And how do I know that he's changed it, and what does he change it to? And I'm building knowledge of the choices, both what my allies are choosing and what my energy choosing is going throughout the game. And as that knowledge builds, I'm keeping it in my head. I'm tracking. Oh, I'm going against a stun lock Myrddin. It's a stun lock Myrddin. I got to be careful not to get too close to. And then if suddenly, halfway through he switches, that could be very disruptive.
Sure,
right?
totally.
So that's our feeling on it. I don't know if you guys feel differently, but
I think too, with the really short action-packed games, I think having to reset and make 6 or 7 choices and go, I think that's going to be really challenging for, of course, the players doing it, but of course, like you mentioned, the players playing against that,
or with them. If you're going stun lock Myrddin, we're allies.
Oh yeah,
I need to know that.
Does Uther all of a sudden respec his ultimate? And how do I play differently around that? And so it's a bit of a concern for us for sure.
Cool, interesting. All right, let's take another one. This one here from Olivia Grace at Blizz Heroes. How did you deal with the balance between utility talents that you have to take, example, plus damage, and fun talents? We kind of heard a little bit about this in your guys' conversation, but any other thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so one of the things that I sort of alluded to earlier was that we found that we actually felt like we had a little too many just obvious just damage choices.
Sure.
As you saw from the presentation, there's a bunch of like utility but power. It really just promotes a lot of different types of gameplay. So we still have a bunch of like straight up damage talents when you look at it on paper like that, but there's far fewer of them.
Yeah, sure.
And really, there's only really one core at the beginning for level 1 for most heroes that's actually just straight up. I want health. Okay, here's the one. Take it, please take it and go. And after that, it gets into very sort of situational kinds of things where you're thinking about, well, am I going to be in a scenario when I want to hit 2 heroes with a Stormbolt? Am I on a map that's likely to occur? Awesome. You know, or if I'm on Dragonshire, where we tend to be split up as a team, maybe a piercing attack on Stormbolt's not as meaningful.
Right, sure. Very interesting. All right, here's another one from, let's see, Lemura's XL. This one, what do you say to the comments that HOTS, or heroes, is too casual or, quote, dumbed down?
I think this is a comment we've heard many, many times, and you know, it's a real concern. We don't hear it as much from players who had a chance to really play, but we do hear it.
Sure.
And we sort of look to, I could do a whole game. I could do a whole Q&A on this topic.
I know.
We started looking at games like Hearthstone. Exactly.
Hearthstone,
on this. When I first played Hearthstone personally, I looked at that game and I said, well, I've played Magic. I've played some of these older card games, and this is clearly removed rules. And so what? How is this supposed to work, right? And I went to Eric and the game director on the game, and I raged at him, and I told him what a terrible job he was doing.
Sorry, Dan.
I'm sorry. I apologize to all of the Hearthstone team for my attitude. I think we all apologize.
We love it now.
But yeah, we're all on board. But once you get into it, you start to see the depth, and once you get into it, you start to understand the nuance. And I'm literally looking at an enemy player, and this is an obvious one for Hearthstone players. But if I'm playing against a Warlock and he puts down a Murloc, like, oh God, here we go. Right? Like, I know what's coming next. And I start playing my hand very differently just based on that one card play. Or if I'm going against, a mage and we're at 6 mana, I'm like, oh boy, here comes the flame strike next turn. I can almost set my watch by it, right? And so I'm starting to play around it in a very different way. And so there's a ton of strategy in that game, but you have to be able to play it a little bit to see the depth. And because the rules look simple and easy to learn, which means basically simple rules.
Simple
but difficult to master, which means lots of strategy is always our value at Blizzard. So when you look at our games, if we're doing them correct, if you look at our games, they should look simple.
They should.
They should look like, well, what? There's nothing. That's the way it should look, right? And then when you get into it, you should go, whoa, this is nuts. And so whether we've hit that or not, I can't say for sure, right? This is what we're doing the technical alpha to find out. This is what we're testing. Obviously, we believe that we have, but we're open to being wrong. And if we find that we have not hit a game that has a ton of depth, we'll fight tooth and nail to get more depth. The goal,
it's easy to add more depth. If I also may, I know we say this a lot, less is more. But when you look at one of the most hardcore games out there, StarCraft 2, really simple rules. A Marine has X amount of HP, X amount of damage, moves this fast, has this rate of fire. That's it, and stim. But how you use those Marines, the decisions to deploy them, that's really what matters. The less you have in the game, the more you focus on the stuff that you have that are available to you. What battleground are you playing? What decisions is my team making? What decisions is the enemy team making? What's the state of the battleground? What's the state of the match? Stuff like that.
There's all this secondary stuff that goes on as well. Where I'm thinking about the players in the game, whether I know them or not. If I know them, it's easier, right? And I can go, I know that so and so is weak, or I know that so and so is very strong. So if I'm playing with Matt, I know Matt is a strong player. And so if I have a triage moment decision, I'm playing Tassadar, and somebody's going to get a shield in the next half a second. Chances are it's going to Matt, right? Because I know Matt will get something done with that extra health. Well, if I'm playing with somebody who I know is not as good, maybe I'm letting them die. And so there's little decisions I'm making there. But even if I don't know them, over the course of a game, I get a sense for how they're playing. I start making those same decisions again. Is this a strong Arthas I'm playing with, or is this guy struggling, right? And then I'll make decisions about how to support him
the best way
based on that scenario. And so, I just want to be clear. The goal is deep gameplay. That's the goal. Always. That's always a Blizzard value, right? Everybody should be able to get in this. Everybody should be able to play it for years and still think there's more, right? That I could master in this game, and that's always the goal. But we do try to make it look easy to start with, and that's also a value as well. And so this is where we always. So that would be my answer to that. But our hope is that we're hitting it. But we're still early. Still wait and see.
That's fair. Totally fair. Okay, next question here from Hotscast. Will we see any more talent options come to the game, perhaps unlockable through the meta leveling system? Kind of hinted at this earlier, but
yeah, absolutely. We have more talents. We're working on them right now. We're looking at talents that are currently in the game that maybe originally when we paper designed them, they seemed like they could be good, but maybe they're a little either under-tuned right now or a little too situational. So we're looking at those, making those better. So I mean, bringing in more talents, upgrading some of the talents that are a little, you don't pick those. That's going to give players a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
And 3 heroic abilities.
Yeah.
Those are technically talents.
Those are talents, right? Like, I don't want to promise anything, but that's something we can look at in the future too. So
totally.
There's a lot we can do there.
Yeah, totally. Very, very cool. Okay, this one from looks like Callie. Will it allow us to use heroes in different roles than the primary ones the one that's intended, i.e., support into a warrior? What are your thoughts there, guys?
Yeah, so like a lot of the decisions that you make as talents are supposed to enhance the hero's fantasy. And if you can imagine that hero doing it on the battlefield, we want to allow that to happen. So where appropriate. I think in that specific question, like supports that can turn into warriors, we actually think like Uther fits into that category really well.
Yeah.
Or if you take like a hero like Tassadar, he could turn into an Archon, and then for a brief period of time, he's actually doing like assassin level damage and just wrecking
that brief
face.
period of time.
Yeah,
it feels like a long time to me. I don't know if it's just assassin damage. It feels like a lot more to me.
A lot more than that.
But that's always my choice when I play Tassadar.
Exactly.
I always announce it to my team.
Yes.
I am going support Tassadar, or I am going damage Tassadar, because it's extremely meaningful with that particular hero.
Yes, I think, to answer that even further, like we have heroes that are definitely kind of locked into their archetype a little bit more than others, but we definitely have heroes like, Tassadar that Ku brings up, that they're mostly a support hero, but there are off ways you can play them that do fit into these other roles. So we want to allow for that where it makes sense.
Totally, very interesting.
We want to make sure that players don't feel like they're making wrong choices. So like, I'm not saying that we're never going to do this, but like, it's highly unlikely that Demon Hunter could ever build into a support role.
Sure.
She's really about killing people. Let's give her very useful ways for supporting her team in killing people.
That's fair enough. All right, next question. Eric Gripping, this one. No items, question mark, question mark, question mark. Is this baby's first MOBA?
Yeah, I feel like, this is something we're very sensitive to. This is something we're very, concerned about, and it's feedback that we sort of welcome, right? Is the game, dumbed down? Does it not have that strength? And we kind of already covered this in some ways, right? But I agree with the concern, right? And the goal is not to make baby's first MOBA. The goal is to make a game that anybody can get into, for sure.
Right.
But the goal is, when we get to that end game scenario where you've played 50, 60, 100, 200, 1,000 hours, whatever it is, that you're still finding nuance, that you're playing against players of your skill level, and it's still an extremely challenging experience. And that's the goal. And we feel like we have the tools to accomplish that. We feel like that the talent system, the maps, the hero designs, all of these things come together to create a game that we believe can be extremely challenging for players to learn and master. But that's why we're doing the alphas, right? We want to find out, right? And see how far it goes. And so, if we need to go in and redesign these talents again, oh, God forbid, but if we do, we can. If we need to go in and, add more complicated heroes, which I think we're actually already really doing. We had an urge early on to try to make sure there were enough heroes like Rainers and heroes like Demon Hunter that were fairly easy to play. At the same time, we want more heroes like Abathur now, right? Where you really feel like you have to make an effort to play this year. And I think you're going to see the heroes we roll out in the next couple of months, some of them will speak to that, right? They will speak specifically heroes like, whoa, that's I got to have a lot of knowledge to play this hero, right? And to figure it out. And we want to provide that kind of content for our players. I think even the talent system you guys have had, I know you guys have been working really hard on this, but Rainer has talents that increase his skill cap. Right, hidden in there, and these guys work on that very hard, right?
One of the goals definitely for the easier heroes with the talent system was like, take a character like Rainer, and we want to give them talents that are just good to use for newer players who that's the reason they're playing Rainer. But for the player who's played Rainer 40, 50 times and they like Rainer, that's why they're still playing him, but they're not a new user anymore. We want to have talent options in there that are good and they're, you know, like I think he has one right now in his penetrating round that the first target he hits with it is stunned.
Right.
Normally that's a skill shot that just hits everything, and it still does, but now he actually cares about who he's hitting first with it. So there's some more gameplay there, and we're, you know, looking to add more actives to those kind of characters.
Yeah, and speaking of more actives, like I've mentioned to Cooper that I think it's great if there's ever a talent that turns your passive trait into an active, that's fair game. And you can have multiple of those. Like we already are doing that with Barbarian. She can activate her trait in order to get more fury. And we have plans for more of those kinds of talents in the future.
Yeah, it's cool.
And the way we're designing the whole UI, you know, is so that these guys can add as many buttons to a hero as they want, right? Like there's no, it doesn't have to stop at QWER.
Right.
Like if we want to have a hero that has got, you know, seriously 10, 20 buttons up there, we could do it. Well, not 20, but 10 for sure, right?
We've already got the, you know, the Z power on the fall stat. He can fly instead of mounting, so that's already an additional power that he has to make use of.
He has to be very strategic about how it functions. But we can add, you know, we can use the number keys. We can make these heroes like playing the piano.
Yeah.
If we find a hero that's appropriate for, right? And we feel, you know, we're getting that feedback and we want to do it. And so the goal is to create that depth. So I really do appreciate this kind of question. I really appreciate the community sort of raising this concern, because we're very cognizant of it. We're very worried about it as well.
Totally. All right, we got time for maybe one or two more questions here. This one from Andrew Fox. For a game focused on team play, what are you thinking regarding tools to help find players to play with long term? I know we already have some of these in the game already, right? Like join friends, just some very few.
I think our social systems are still,
Totally.
and this is again what's hard for people to know what's real and not real in the game. I think if I were to go over to, you know, the guys working on those systems right now, they say that's very rudimentary, right? That our social systems are the very, very, again, we can barely put these out. Like, okay, we can do this because we want to get the game in people's hands. We want to start testing, but we want to do so much more with these systems. Again, I could do a whole Q&A on just the social systems.
Should we do that as like our next show?
We should do something
sometime in the future.
We should do a Q&A.
Yeah.
Maybe our next Q&A.
But yeah, for us, we want to create certainly channels where we can get people in there. We've talked about ideas of friend finders, right? Ways you can find people who play at the same time of day as you, who have the same kind of skill. I don't know which one of these are going to stick, what we can actually do. But it's a very real concern. It's something we're very excited to do better. And I think you look at the evolution of World of Warcraft, you've seen great improvements over the years in terms of how they get you into guilds, how they get you into groups, all this stuff. And so we're going to be trying to take, you know, some pages from their book about how they've accomplished those tasks. But I think you'll also see from us an evolution of this, right? You'll see from us, we've got something in now that really doesn't do much for you except get you into a general chat and good luck, buddy. Hope you find somebody who's even close to your skill level, right?
LFG.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully your friends got invited. A couple thousand invites. Or whatever,
yeah, totally. So we've got just something barely that doesn't really work, but it kind of does. And then we're just going to add and feel it out and try to be real about it. I think the concern is real. I think the value is real, much more so than StarCraft.
Sure.
Right, where StarCraft was generally focused on 1v1. And you would have, obviously, team players, but 1v1 was a big focus of that experience for our community. In this case, obviously, it's a team-focused game, and so we really want to get you into a team of people you know, that you respect, that you synergize with, and you have a good time with.
Awesome. All right, let's take one more. This final one from Alan Woodman. What do you think about the pace of the game? Do you guys, it's a bit slow, or is it as desired? Feel it's a bit slow, or is it as desired? What are your thoughts on pacing?
I think we're still discussing.
We're still discussing.
We've gotten this feedback. Like we felt like it was pretty good. We've gotten some feedback that's a little slow, and now we're starting to look at that and go, huh, is it a little slow? And I think we're going to do some tests even today, right, on what we can do to speed up the game. And does that feel better? Does it feel worse? Right? Like it's going to be a balance, right? Because you want to be in that scenario at the beginning of the game where there's not as much threat, where things are moving a little faster. And at the end of the game, man, it moves pretty fast for me at the end of the game sometimes. I've been just aerosoled sometimes in some battles, so I don't know if the team fights need to be faster.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are.
We've kind of experimented, you know, both ways with this. We've had it slower, we've had it faster, and you know, we kind of stuck to where we're at now because it felt like it was complicated enough and complex enough that, you know, you had to really focus on what you were doing, but there was still time to adjust to what the enemies were doing and stuff like that. So
we got leveling in the field as well, which I know is a factor. You know, that once you really understand. Once you understand what the talents do for you, and once you understand what the enemy talents are doing for them, and what your allied talents are doing for them, and how it all comes together.
Oh, and the map mechanics spawn.
Oh, don't forget the map, right? And I'm doing all of this math in my head. It's like, whoa, like, I don't know.
And go. Use the healing fountain and
go. And go, right?
Manage that cooldown.
Do you want to go for the grave golem, or are you going for the tribute? Like, there's enough going on that it's not a slam dunk just to say, dude, just juice it up 20% and let's be done with it, right?
No.
So we want to kind of feel it and play with it and think through it, but we do want to hear this feedback. I think it's been very valuable feedback for us. I don't know that we would even be looking at this, today if the community had not given us this feedback. So awesome.
Awesome.
Very good.
All right, guys. Well, fair enough. Let's wrap this thing up and get into a game, I'd say. You guys have any quick shout-outs to either your teammates or the community out there? Any last words before we jump off?
Yeah, big shout out to everyone who's playing. You guys really are exciting. Thank you for all the interest in the game. And honestly, like we talked about it at BlizzCon. This is really BlizzCon the game. The excitement for Blizzard and all the characters has really made this possible. It's really the first step that we're making towards making this super awesome game.
I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's been working so hard on this game.
Team one.
Not just design, art, everyone, right?
And
I think Claudio, who'll be in this match today, it's his birthday today.
Happy birthday, Claudio.
Cool.
Yeah, no, it's been an absolute joy. And it's been really fun seeing a lot of the StarCraft streamers and pros coming over and playing and be able to play against these guys. I've been watching them on TV for years now and to be able to play against these guys. So yeah, everybody who's participating in the alpha, thank you so much. You guys have given us so much great feedback and you've given us such great games. It's really allowing us to improve this product.
Yep. All right, very good. Well, we're going to jump into our game now. Let's take one final look at the straw poll here to see what the community's decided. And yes, it has been decided. Richard will be playing Diablo in the game. We're going to be jumping over to that real quick, but let me sign off with a few final words. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can find us on all places at /BlizzHeroes. So Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We'd love to see you join our community in those locations, as well as our new forums, which you can find at heroesofthestorm.com. We want to talk with you. We want to hear what you think about the game, so come chat with us. I think that's about it. Let's transition to our game. It will be a few minutes for us, so you'll see a slate come up, but we are not going anywhere. We will bring you that game as soon as we possibly can. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Jazz hands.